In the early 2020s, Silicon Valley ran into a problem it couldn't solve with softwares. It wasn't a data breach, neither was it a talent shortage. It was a materials problem. Behind every smartphone, electric vehicle, and every artificial intelligence system sits a class of minerals most consumers never hear about. They don't appear in product launches, nor mentioned in keynote speeches, but without them, the modern tech economy simply stops. As demand for advanced technology accelerated, something became impossible to ignore as innovation had outpaced supply security. Silicon Valley had built the future on materials it did not control, and that realization changed everything. This is how African rare earth materials power Silicon Valley, a global hub for technology, innovation in Northern California's San Francisco's Bay Area, home to tech giants like Apple, Google, and Meta.
17 metals buried deep beneath the earth are now at the center of a global race. They power the phone in your hand, the car on your street, the wind turbines on your horizon, and the weapons that defend nations.
Despite the name, rare earths aren't actually rare. They are a group of 17 metallic elements used to make electronics more efficient, magnets smaller, motors stronger, and screens brighter. They sit quietly inside hard drives, electronic motors, sensors, and servers. In simple terms, rare earths makes modern technology possible, but their importance doesn't come from scarcity in the ground. It comes from what happens after they are mined and processed. Rare earths are notoriously difficult to refine. Separating usable elements from raw ore requires complex chemical processing, specialized facilities, and the willingness to absorb significant environmental and financial costs. In financial terms, rare earths follow a simple rule. Mining creates volume, and refining creates leverage. And leverage is where power accumulates. Silicon Valley rarely talks about rare earths publicly because internally they are tracked with precision. Every electronic motor in a data center cooling system, wind turbine supporting cloud infrastructure, and advanced manufacturing process used in chips and batteries are all powered with the help of rare earth materials. Rare earths are not optional inputs, they are structural dependencies. This dependence creates vulnerability, and when supply is disrupted, costs rise. Also, when refining capacity is concentrated, bargaining power disappears. And when geopolitical or industrial bottlenecks appear, innovation alone cannot solve them. By the late 2010s, tech companies understood this clearly. The question was no longer whether rare earth materials mattered, it was how to secure them. As demand surged, governments and corporations began looking beyond traditional suppliers. Diversification became the new priority. New projects were mapped, old assumptions were challenged. Countries that had once been peripheral to high-tech supply chains suddenly became strategically relevant, and Southern Africa quietly entered the picture. And one country began to appear repeatedly in industry briefings and supply chain assessments. That country was Namibia, a country in the southern part of Africa.
The mining sector was the best performing sector in 2018 as reported by the Namibian Statistics Agency. Recording a strong growth rate of 22%, the positive industry growth was driven by a production increase of diamonds and uranium in comparison with 2017.
Namibia doesn't dominate headlines. It is politically stable, has modern ports, and sits along established shipping routes. Geologically, it holds promising deposits of critical minerals, including rare earth elements. On paper, Namibia represents opportunity, a chance for Africa to participate in one of the most strategic supply chains of the modern economy. Mining is the biggest contributor to Namibia's economy in terms of revenue. It accounts for 25% of the country's income. In 2014, Namibia was the fourth largest exporter of non-ferrous minerals in Africa. But history suggests that geology alone doesn't determine outcomes. Understanding what Namibia's role will become, you must look at how value moves. To understand who benefits from rare earths, you must follow the material itself step by step. The first is extraction. In Namibia, rare earth ore is pulled from the ground. This stage requires capital, equipment, labor, and tolerance for environmental disruption. Margins are thin, and the risks are high. The second being exports. Here, the raw materials is shipped out, often with minimal processing. This isn't by accident. It reflects how infrastructure and contracts were designed, followed by the third step being refining. This is where the transformation happens. Ore becomes usable input, value multiplies, pricing power emerges. The fourth switch is manufacturing. At this stage, refined materials are turned into magnets, components, and precision parts used for making electronic gadgets, motor parts, and lots more. Then we have a final stage, which is integration and branding. Technology companies integrate these components into finished products that command enormous margins. At each step, value increases, but so does Africa's role shrinks going forward. In Namibia, the rare earth story is physical. Ore leaves mining sites in Arandis and moves towards ports like Walvis Bay. From there, it enters global shipping networks, indistinguishable from countless other raw exports leaving the continent. This moment, when materials leave the country, is very decisive. Once exported raw, the opportunity to capture downstream value largely disappears. Refining, component manufacturing, and pricing decisions happen elsewhere, which increases in value for where it is being manufactured. In global commodity markets, bottlenecks matter more than abundance. Oil refineries decide fuel margins, gold refineries decide liquidity and trust, while rare earth refineries decide the future of advanced technology. By the early 2020s, the majority of global rare earth refining capacity was concentrated in a single country. This concentration did not happen by accident. It was the result of early investment, industrial policy, and the willingness to absorb costs that others avoided. The result is a structural bottleneck. This was because countries that mine rare earths without refining them remain price takers, while countries that define them become price setters. And for Namibia, like much other parts of Africa, remains on the wrong side of that divide.
In the 1800s, King Leopold II of Belgium sought to pull other resources from the DRC and deployed colonists to steal land. Soon, a runaway market for rubber extraction went on to feed the automotive industry boom of the early 20th century. And while the investors profited in the millions, little was shared with the Congolese harvesting the rubber. The DRC gained its independence in 1960, but was left with weakened institutions, no infrastructure for education, and a devastated local economy, all of which set the groundwork for decades of failed leadership and installed dictators.
This structure isn't new. African oil followed the same path: exported raw, refined abroad, sold back at higher prices. Rare earths are not an exception. They are the latest iteration of a system designed to separate extraction from value creation. Now, if you trace ownership through rare earth supply chains, a pattern emerges. The names evolve, corporate structure shifts, and jurisdiction changes. But one thing is certain: the control remains concentrated. Companies that secure early positions upstream continue to influence downstream flows. Processing, pricing, and profit booking occur where capital is safest and returns are highest. For Silicon Valley, this system works exceptionally well. Technology firms do not need to own mines, neither do they need to refine minerals. They only need reliable access. By securing long-term supply agreements and diversified sourcing, they stabilize input costs while focusing on the most profitable stages of the value chain, which is design, integration, and branding. From a balance sheet perspective, This is efficiency, and from a global development perspective, it is imbalance. Refining does more than increasing margins. It creates skilled employment, technical expertise, supply ecosystems, industrial learning, and capital accumulation. Without refining, economies remain locked into volume-based growth, export earnings fluctuate, and development becomes fragile while the economy plunges down. Namibia exports more materials, but captures little more value. This is the real cost of staying upstream. It's not just lost revenue, it's a lost trajectory. Countries that refine materials develop industries around them. Countries that export raw materials remain dependent on external demand and pricing decisions, meaning that Namibia's rare earths contribute to the future of technology, but Namibia itself remains slightly absent from the future. From the outside, it looks like Namibia is included in the whole process. New projects, foreign investments, and growing exports. But participation is not the same as control. Supplying inputs does not guarantee ownership of outcomes, and without moving up the value chain, Africa's role remains structurally limited to being at the bottom. Every modern device contains materials that began their journey far from the places where profits are counted. Often, that journey starts in Africa and passes through Namibia. But the future of technology is not built where materials are extracted. It is built where they are refined, priced, and integrated. Silicon Valley didn't just innovate its way to dominance. It secured the bottlenecks and made proper use of them by refining and manufacturing. The world is entering an era defined by artificial intelligence, advanced technology, and electrification. All of it depends on rare earths. Many of these rare earths come from Africa, but the system that decides who profits were designed elsewhere outside of Africa. To round this up, I think until value creation moves closer to where resources are extracted, countries like Namibia and similar around Africa will continue to power the future without owning it.